Welcome everyone to the regular meeting for the City of Lacombe. It is Monday, May 13th and 5:30 p.m. I'll call the meeting to order. To begin with, has everybody had an opportunity to look at the consent agenda? Are there any items there for considered for removal? If not, by unanimous consent, we can move on to the regular agenda. Anything with regards to the regular agenda? Councillor Ross. Very good. Councillor Dallas. Agenda.
He says, yeah.
Yeah. Good to go?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I don't have any additions. So I guess motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please go ahead and vote. And you'll see there are 6 votes for and 1 no vote. Councillor Hoekstra sends her regrets this evening, so that is passed unanimously. So we'll continue on to requests for decision. Senior Manager McKinnon, let's begin with item 6.1, the 2024 tax rate bylaw before us for 3rd reading this evening.
Good evening, Mayor Creasy and Council. Tonight I'm here to present City of Lacombe's tax rate bylaw 516 and bylaw 517 for your consideration for 3rd reading. Bylaw 516 adheres to the directives set out in the 2024 operating budget process, aiming to increase the city's annual tax revenue by 3.75%. This decision, although lower than the average CPI increase of 5%, reflects a commitment to responsible fiscal management while adequately funding essential services. Bylaw 517, the special paving tax, raises funding for road investment in Lacombe. This tax, equivalent to 1% of the prior year's municipal tax, demonstrates our commitment to enhancing infrastructure, specifically targeting pavement rehabilitation on C&E Trail. These bylaws will collectively generate $23.9 million in total tax revenue, ensuring alignment with our budgetary commitments. Table 2 shows the tax impact of a residential home assessed at $350,000 in 2023. The mill rates have declined because overall increasement in assessment of our city has grown. Chart 2 shows that if a residential income or residential home gets 5% increase in assessment, their annual tax increase from 2023 is approximately $93 or $7.73 per month. Also requested tonight is council approval to transfer the budget for victim services from the Police Department 21 to a separate Department 22. Starting in April 1st, 2024, Victim Services Unit and a company grant are now under the direction of the Lacombe Police Services. The budget approval in November 2023 included the victim services budgets, and the grant is part of Department 21. To streamline grant reporting, and we are recommending transferring victim services budget to Department 22 under the responsibility of the Lacombe Police Services. The net impact to the overall budget is 0. The city administration recommends council to approve 3rd reading of bylaw 516 and bylaw 517, along with approval of budget changes outlined in table 5. Once the tax bylaws are approved, tax notices will be prepared and mailed out to residents in May, with a due date of June 30th, 2024. Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senior Manager McKinnon. I appreciate you having in the report here, having the differences in assessed value with that 5% difference, just to give people a bit of an idea of those changes. Is it fair to say that all residential properties last year did see an increase in assessment value though?
No, not every property. Mayor Creasy saw an increase. It's a rotating average of 3 years. So some residents in some areas have a lot of house sales, and that average will drive that neighborhood up 1 year, and the next neighborhood might get a little bit more of an impact the next year. So it's kind of it's not necessarily a consistent 5% increase. It's based on home sales. It's based on your value and the surveys that are conducted by our assessors. But overall, there has been a 5% increase in total assessment, residential and non-residential.
Thank you. Councillor Koenig.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'm sorry, I'm just looking for clarification. It was part of Lacombe Police Service Department 21, and then we moved it to Department 22 under the Lacombe Police Service. So which department is Lacombe Police Service and which one isn't? Or are they both? Or it's a brand new one, thank you.
That's correct. Councillor Koenig. So this is the first year the Victim Services Unit has been included in our budget underneath the police services, and we estimated it would happen in April, and it did. We would like to separate it into a separate business unit or Department 22 for grant reporting purposes, and also for the commission to be able to evaluate the police services budget separate from victim services. So it's kind of a twofold purpose. For grant reporting, it would be great to have victim services in their own specific department that we can meet all the granting requirements, as well as allow the police commission to look at just the police services budget separate. It's a break-even budget right now, victim services. The grant funding covers the budgeted costs. So it's a net impact of 0 to the city. However, it does have a lot of reporting required.
Councillor Hibbs.
Changes for this reading. So I would move that council give third reading to bylaw 516.
Thank you. One last opportunity for input. And seeing none, please go ahead and vote. Bylaw 516 was
I voted no.
I was like, I definitely voted yes. We were just looking at it.
so that's interesting. There we have a small glitch whereby two councillors may have had their electronics switched, just to lighten the mood here when it comes to financial matters. So I'm assuming that the vote as shown visually is incorrect.
Yes.
Okay. When someone's watching that online, can they see that vote? Okay. I guess we'll leave that to IT how to fix the visual end of it. As far as the voiceover part, I think I would be correct in saying that that was bylaw 516 is passed by a margin of 5-1, with the one vote not passing it would be Councillor Gullickson. Very good. Apologies for the confusion. That would be interesting. Be interesting if we hear about that from everybody watching. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll make the next motion that council gives third reading to bylaw 517.
Thank you. And likewise, one last opportunity for input. Seeing none, but we can please go ahead and vote. Now that we have all the machines in the right location, it doesn't matter because they're all the same way anyway. So that is unanimously in favor. And bylaw 517 is passed. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll make the final motion that council approves budget changes in table 5.
And I don't know, there'll be a bunch more input on that victim services designation for that account. Please go ahead and vote. Those budget changes have been approved unanimously. Thank you. And next up, got our planning department here, Tech Carpenter. Pleasure to have you here. Bringing for us the planning and development services fee review update, specifically for bylaw 520. And the safety codes permit proposed for first and second reading this evening. Whenever you're ready to go, the floor is yours.
So good evening, Mayor Creasy and members of council. Tonight, we are bringing back the Planning and Development Services fee schedule. As well, we will be presenting the Planning and Development fee schedule policy for consideration for approval and the safety codes permit bylaw for first and second reading. The City of Lacomb's 2023 to 2026 strategic plan has identified an action to review planning and development services fees. Administration has presented a post fee schedule and heard council feedback at 2 different meetings on January 22nd, 2024 and March 4th, 2024. Based on input at those meetings, we heard that potential fee changes should be considered individually where applicable, and with an emphasis on keeping fees comparable and competitive to other municipalities in the region. While there was recognition that fees should have some increases, it was tolerable for fees to be lower than the regional median values. So a bit of background on planning and development services fees. They're separated into the 2 different categories. So we have the planning and development fees. These include items such as our development permits, deposits, plan amendments, subdivisions, and file search requests. And then we have our safety codes fees. So those are your building, electrical, plumbing, and gas permit or related permits. During this fee review, administration evaluated fee schedules from Lacomb's general comparators, as well as 8 regional municipalities. Through this, we learned that 66% of Lacomb's planning and development fees were below the regional median, while 97% of Lacomb's safety codes fees were below the regional median. So planning and development services fee schedules are currently contained within 1 council policy and 2 bylaws. So along with the fees themselves, these documents were also reviewed and updated during this process. We'll first look at our planning and development fees, the planning and development fee schedule policy, which contains our planning and development fees. The council policy was reviewed and amended and included as an attachment to the report. So a couple proposed policy updates. The document was updated to the current council policy template. Some of the wording was edited for clarity, as well as several sections were added in. So for example, section 5.1, the collection of fees heading, and this includes a clause stating that fees are to be collected before services are provided, as well as section 5.3, refund fees. This includes a clause that an administrative fee of 25% of the permit fee will be applied to applications deemed incomplete or canceled at the applicant's request after staff have conducted their review. With this, the advertising and circulation fees are only refunded if those activities have not occurred. So moving into the actual fees themselves, to highlight the proposed changes, included as a report attachment was a summary document that identified the current fee, proposed fee, our regional values, and percentages to show the change from the current fee, as well as our difference from the regional median. So a few of these proposed changes include, so the planning and development fee in proposed increases range from 25 to 100%, and this still keeps the majority of them below the median. Additional fee types for development permits were added in, which better represents the type of permits being applied for and takes into consideration some of the staff resources required to process the applications. So for example, with a residential permit, we now have, or we're proposing a permit type for constructing a house, as well as a separate one for an accessory building, so a shed or a detached garage. The accessory building permit fee is lower, and this is because the review process for those permits are less intensive. We also are proposing land use bylaw amendments to for land use bylaw amendments, we're proposing to streamline the fees from 3 fee types down to 2. So this will simplify the application process. And as well as encroachment fees have been expanded. So currently we just have 1 fee type. So we're proposing to add fee types for different structures, as well as an application fee, and then a variable encroachment agreement fee when applicable. So now moving on to our safety codes fees. So currently these fee schedules are housed under 2 separate bylaws, and we're proposing to consolidate these into 1 safety codes permit bylaw. The proposed consolidated bylaw includes updated terminology to align with our Safety Codes Act, updated fee schedules for the building, electrical, gas, and plumbing permits. We're also looking to increase the administrative fee when an active permit is canceled prior to an inspection or an extension request. So currently the city retains 20% of the permit fee, but we're proposing to up this to 25%. And looking at adding a fee for requests to reopen an expired permit if an extension has not previously been provided. So it's proposed that 50% of the original permit fee will be charged. So with both of these fee additions, this will encourage applicants to complete their permits before their expiry dates, and also accounts for the increased administrative costs to reopen or reinspect permits.
Excuse me. So in the past, I know our permit contractor has charged or worked on a percentage basis. You said we're contemplating increasing ours to 25%. Sounds good in the service. I'm just curious, how does that affect the current contractor? Or is there an agreement coming up shortly, or?
With the current contractor, we are going up for our RFP
Okay.
next year for 2025. The current agreement is a 50% split between the city and our contracted safety codes provider. So that would remain. So they would get half of that, 25%.
Thank you.
Yes.
That makes okay. Great. Thanks.
Okay, so with the fees for the safety codes bylaw, so similar to planning and development fees, summary document was provided that outlines all the proposed changes. A few highlights from this document include, so building permit fee increases range from 10 to 60%. Electrical, gas, and plumbing permit fee increases range from 25 to 50%. Some new fee types are proposed to be added in. So a solar installation would be added in under the building permits. Reopening expired permits and reinspection requests would be added in under all permit types. And homeowner permits would be added in under plumbing and gas. Currently, these are only listed under electrical. For these permits, you still permit is canceled or refused after the application has been refused. Currently, we refund 75% of the fee. But this clause only actually applies to electrical, plumbing, and gas permits. So by changing this, it would apply to all of our secondary permits. So looking ahead to implementation, The proposed fee changes will impact developers, contractors, and property owners who utilize services provided by Planning and Development Services. To provide time to adjust to this change, we are proposing the new fees to be introduced October 1st, 2024. So this would provide approximately 4 months advance notice, and it would be outside of the busier summer construction season. Administration is recommending the following motions: that council approves Planning and Development Services Fee Schedule Policy 61-210-01, 2004 PO, and that council gives first reading to the Safety Codes Permit Bylaw, Bylaw 520 as presented, and that council gives second reading to the Safety Codes Permit Bylaw, Bylaw 520 as presented. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you. I'm not seeing a lot of lights here, so you might get off the hook. Easy. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So I believe this is the third time we've spoken to you about this now. So thank you for returning again with our input. From what I could tell, there is a lot of information there, and I appreciate the amount of work that you guys have done to keep bringing it back to us. The one question I have, I guess, in regards to the safety permit officer, if there is difficulty with the RFP, are we able to bring this back again and adjust if necessary to ensure we are getting quality inspectors?
Thank you, Councillor Dallas and Mayor Creasy. We certainly could. We could also adjust the RFP. So the current share is 50-50. Some other communities in Southern Alberta, for example, that I'm aware of have a 40-60 where the inspectors get 60%. So perhaps if we did have difficulty during our RFP circulation, we could adjust that percentage. If that wasn't working, we could come back with the fees. But I imagine that the share of the is also of concern. The percentage share is also of concern to contractors.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'm just looking at some of the new fees under planning and development. Preliminary review of revised plans. The comparables don't seem to do that. Why is it that we're suggesting we do it?
Thank you, Councillor Connick. So that was proposed by the development officers to account for the resources required to complete a preliminary review. We don't get a lot of them. There are few and far between, but sometimes it almost is the exact same review as going through a full permit process. So there was a recommendation to add that in to account for those resources of essentially reviewing an application twice. And especially if they're making a bunch of changes, then they're having to complete the reviews over and over again. So it's just to ensure that when people are submitting reviews and submitting applications, that they are serious with their intent and looking to actually go ahead with the project.
If I may add one more.
Certainly.
Thank you. Okay, and then you also under file search, current landowner includes RPR and plans. You have a $25 scan copy and a $50. Why is it not 20? Isn't it the same thing? Just trying to figure out why printed is $25 more.
So typically when, thank you, Councillor Connick. So the scanned copy would be just that. We'd be scanning it and emailing it to them. The printed copies are when they're actually wanting us to print out plans. So typically the plans that we're talking about are 36 by 36 inches, and they're old historical plans, and they use quite a bit of resources. So it's to encourage people to use digital for the app or for the individual requesting.
Okay, I've come here many times for RPRs and I only get them on a sheet this big. So I don't know the big, huge sheet you're alluding to. They don't have to be printed on that. They can be
Yes.
printed on a much smaller format. So
Yeah.
and I get charging, especially realtors, are these fees. I don't understand why we want to charge the landowners. I mean, you should be able to get something when you pay your taxes. I know you get lots of things when we pay our taxes, but these kind of fees, I know, they're kind of nitpicky to me a little bit, but same with the historical permit search. You know, we haven't done it in the past. I don't, the amount of revenue you're gonna make, I don't see as being significant, so I'm not sure. Anyways, it's,
And may I clarify what or may I clarify my statement? For RPRs, those would be a $25 charge. The printed copies, those are the larger plans when they're looking for their actual floor plans or the historical plans. But the intent would be that the RPR would be a $25 charge, which does align with many of the municipalities that we spoke to that are starting to charge for them.
Councillor Roth.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll make the first motion on the council approves Planning and Development Services Fee Schedule Policy 66-210.01 to 2024 PO.
Not seeing another bunch of lights on here. For me, I appreciate what Councillor Connick said about some of these fees and whatnot. However, I think this strikes a reasonable balance between allowing for staff time to provide these obviously helpful drawings and papers for people, helpful because they wouldn't pay for them if they weren't. So I don't know. Never like to see fees go up, but I think in this case, I think these are reasonable and reflective of the region as a whole. So that helps justify it somewhat in my mind. If I see there's no one else, motion before us for the approval of Planning and Development Services Fee Policy. I'll read the number again. Please go ahead and vote. And by a margin of 5-1, so noted. Councillor Connick, thank you. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Make the motion that council gives first reading of the Safety Codes Permit Bylaw 520 as presented.
Thank you. This must be an indication of the quality of the presentation. There's no questions or comments. And therefore, seeing none, call the vote. Please go ahead and do so. And that is passed unanimously in favor for first reading of the Safety Codes Permit Bylaw 520. See if there's any appetite for second reading. Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I would move that council give second reading to the Safety Codes Permit Bylaw 520 as presented.
Thank you. Expect an equal number of participants for input there. Please go ahead and vote on second reading. And that is unanimously passed as well. And then for the Safety Codes Permit Bylaw, third reading, do we have an idea when we can look forward to considering that?
Mayor Creasy, it would be ready to come back to the next meeting if that meets the legislative timeline between bylaw readings. So either the next meeting or June.
Sounds good. Thank you. I just want that to be known in case there's additional input from our building community and whatnot, that there is certainly some time to bring it forward. However, they need to be on it sooner as opposed to later. And as if by magic, it is precisely 6 p.m. So we can back up to section 5 under public hearings for the bylaw 400.54 land use bylaw amendment for the amendment in Mackenzie Ranch area for an R5 site. And with respect to that item, I declare the statutory public hearing for bylaw 400.54 now open, and that this hearing is held pursuant to sections 7, 8, 230, 606, 640, and 692 of the Municipal Government Act 2000 as amended, and request the legislative coordinator to confirm the purpose of this public hearing, that the statutory public hearing notice was advertised as required by the city's advertising bylaw, and that any written submissions received and not included in the public hearing agenda package are now read into the record.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy and Council. The purpose of the public hearing is to allow the general public to provide input to the proposed amending bylaw 400.54, given first reading April 8th, 2024. Bylaw 400.54 proposes to amend land use bylaw 400. If approved, bylaw 400.54 will redesignate a 1.37 hectare portion of the Southwest 2040-26 W4M from future designation FD district to residential multi-unit dwelling R5 district. In accordance with the city's advertising bylaw 482 and section 606 of the MGA requirements for advertising, a public hearing notice was advertised on the city's website and in the Lacombe Express on Thursday, April 18th, 2024 and Thursday, April 25th, 2024, as shown in the agenda package. Mayor Creasy and Council, 2 written submissions were received and are included in the agenda package. The city received no registrants from the members of the public to speak today.
Thank you. I'd like to remind that all persons giving oral presentations are to clearly state their name, and presentations are to be brief and to the point. The order of the statutory public hearing presentation will be as follows. First off will be the development officer or designate, followed by those in favor, and those opposed, and finally any person deemed to be affected who wishes to be heard. And with that in mind, I would call upon Manager Hackett to come up and join us. Give you a moment to prepare your notes there, Manager Hackett, and whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mayor Creasy. Good evening, members of council. Now that we've opened the public hearing, it's my pleasure to present on bylaw 400.54, which as stated, does consider redesignation in the Mackenzie Ranch area for a parcel of land from future designation district to multi-unit dwelling R5 district. So the purpose of the bylaw is specifically to redesignate a 1.37 hectare parcel of land, which is 3.3 acres, located in the Mackenzie Ranch area, to R5. This redesignation will allow for construction of higher density housing consistent with the Mackenzie Ranch outline plan. At this time, the parcel is not yet subdivided, but once the amendment to the land use bylaw is approved, subdivision would proceed. This is the subject property shown here in red. And so as you can see, it is still part of the remaining quarter section. So the legal description is the southwest quarter of section 20, township 40, range 26, west of the 4th meridian. And the 1.37, approximately shown there. The road will also be extended. It would be part of the subdivision as well to extend Homestead Road north. This photograph was taken a few weeks ago before things kind of greened up, but this is the parcel as it appears at this time, undeveloped and facing east. There is a sign if anyone is living or driving through Mackenzie Ranch area, there is a sign just indicating that it's a possibility for future development. So the neighbors were aware of it probably before they were even notified of the public hearing. The request has been made by the landowners to proceed with redesignation, and they do wish to proceed with making the lands available for sale as an R5 property. And R5, the purpose of this district is for residential development, primarily in the form of higher density. And so R5 allows a range of uses, both discretionary and permitted. On the permitted side, an example would be apartment housing or multi-attached housing. And a discretionary example would be a care residence, for instance. The applicant has indicated that they anticipate it developing as apartment housing, but of course a development permit would come forward with the details later if the parcel was rezoned. Regardless of the style of development, the maximum density within the R5 district is 80 dwelling units per hectare. So on a 1.37 hectare parcel, we're looking at about a maximum of 109 units if it was built to the maximum. In assessing the application, we reviewed the statutory plans of Lacombe, including the municipal development plan. The future land use concept map of the MDP does identify the subject area for future residential, so the application is consistent with that. In terms of the Southeast Area Structure Plan, the lands are also shown as future residential, so consistent as well with the Area Structure Plan. And just noting in the Area Structure Plan that the parcel is adjacent to future park and trail system, so that makes it suitable for residential development, certainly, and for higher density residential as well. There are several key policies in the Area Structure Plan which are also of interest in this case. And that is that the development density shall be a minimum of 15 units per developable hectare within the Southeast area. And so this proposal as a higher density property does meet that, that minimum, of course. And also that no more than 70% of the dwelling units within an outline plan shall be single detached dwellings. And so R5, as it supports multi-attached and apartment style housing, certainly contributes to meeting this goal as well. The Southeast Area Structure Plan also talks about a desire to accommodate housing diversity in this part of Lacombe. And again, adding an R5 property will provide diversity in housing in Lacombe. So the proposed redesignation is seen as consistent with the Southeast Area Structure Plan. It is also consistent with the outline plan for Mackenzie Ranch and the parcel. This is a figure from the outline plan. The parcel that we're talking about is circled in red there at the north part of the quarter section, and it is shown as an R4 or R5 multifamily property. And so there's no changes or amendments required to the outline plan. The surrounding area in Mackenzie Ranch is very diverse. So there certainly is a diversity of housing available now, and this will continue to add to it. The surrounding area has a little bit of, I think, every kind of, almost every kind of residential zoning, because there is some R1 to the west. There is some R2 development as well, R3 modular housing district on the south, and some R4. There's some currently under construction, actually, and there is an existing R5 site as well, and this will be a second R5 site in that area. During the circulation, we did receive some public comments back, and they appear on the agenda in full, as well as the administrative response to that. But just to summarize, the concerns were primarily around traffic network connections. And in terms of an administrative response, we have indicated that in future there is an integrated traffic network planned. That includes transportation connections to the north and east of Mackenzie Ranch, and an arterial road is planned to the south. None of these future roads are required to support the existing development layout in the Mackenzie Ranch outline plan at this time. And because the R5 site proposed aligns with the planned land uses for the area, there was no trigger for a new traffic review. Had the plan been amended, had the outline plan required an amendment, this probably would have triggered a new traffic engineering review, but it is in alignment with the outline plan. Second comment that we received was that building affordable housing is important. And so City of Lacombe policies do support a variety of housing types for affordability, but for many reasons. So in summary, the proposed redesignation to R5 is consistent with Lacombe statutory plans. The Mackenzie Ranch outline plan shows the site as an R5 site. The site is able to be serviced and transportation needs can be accommodated. The surrounding zoning in the area is mixed with the goal of offering diversified housing options in the Mackenzie Ranch area. And future planned parks, trails, road connections, and a school site will serve the future residents of the R5 parcel and Mackenzie Ranch area in general. So it is recommended tonight that Council give second reading to bylaw 400.54 as presented, and that Council resolves to consider third reading of bylaw 400.54 at the same meeting tonight, a second reading. And if that passes unanimously, that Council gives third reading to bylaw 400.54 as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Hackett. And with your conclusion there, I would call on those who wish to speak in favor of bylaw 400.54. Now step forward. And a reminder for the benefit of those watching at home or in the gallery, if you could use the microphone before stating your name, and then the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Ron Henschel. I'm speaking on behalf of 467-407 Alberta Limited, the owners of the property. As in the previous presentation, the city's planning and development staff did an excellent job presenting the facts and the information. I'll keep it short and brief. We were excited to bring this parcel on. The parcel fits within the outline plan and the other planning documents within the area, provide a mix, adds to the mix of the development housing types in the area, and will support affordable housing initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of bylaw 400.54? Now is your time to do so. If there's no one who wishes to speak in favor, I will call on those who wish to speak in opposition to bylaw 400.54. Step forward now. And I see no one wishing to speak in opposition. So I will ask that any person who is deemed to be affected, wishes to be heard, now is your opportunity to speak. And I expect there will be an equal number of people take me up on that offer. And given that, I will declare that the public hearing for bylaw 400.54 to be now closed at 6:14 p.m. And if there's no opposition from council, I would suggest that we do a slight modification to order of business and go to item 6.4 for the 400.54 land use bylaw amendment. And we'll consider that for unanimous consent, seeing no lights on. Very good. Manager Hackett, I will call you back up. Please, and ask you to speak on the second and perhaps third reading of the amendment in Mackenzie Ranch 400.54 amendment.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. As stated, the proposed bylaw amendment 400.54 is consistent with Lacombe statutory plans and the Mackenzie Ranch outline plan. It is recommended that council give second reading to the bylaw as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Just trying to visualize a future artery route that I guess would somewhat address the concerns of citizens that have already submitted concerns. To me, I guess the Wolf Creek Drive, or come out there, that's obviously already traffic light controlled, which would be, but there's some topography challenges in that area. Is that where would future expansion, because really that's the whole area is hopefully potentially going to have residential, but for another option for Mackenzie Way, I'm trying to visualize what's the future alternative option for coming out of Mackenzie Way from the east side currently. Would that come out at where the end of Wolf Creek Drive where the lights are? Sorry, I'm trying to visualize the future here.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. I might call on Director Thompson to assist me with the traffic engineering question, please.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So the road network would connect north through the Wolf Creek Crossing, Lacombe Market Square area, and then there'll be an option to go east or west or north from there as part of the road network on that quarter section. So it goes to a T intersection initially, and then there's a north-south road up to that set of lights that exist now on Highway 12.
Thank you for that, Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'm trying to think of the proper way to ask this, but this lot on its own, is it upheld to our density requirements, or is it a part of is there a bigger picture with this? I guess what I'm trying to ask is, would there still be a need for multi-residential houses anyway to meet our density requirements, whether it's this style or another style of multi-residential?
Councillor Dallas, members of council, I think I interpret the question as, is Mackenzie Ranch already meeting the density requirements, or is this site required to meet the density requirements? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, but I'm trying to, I guess, I apologize. I'm struggling to find the proper ways here. Yeah, it's not so much is it meeting it right now, or but it would be necessary. The way I see it is I do see quite a few single family homes in there, and I do see some other multifamily, but I'm just trying to understand how big of a picture the density requirements are for this area, or is it only as it gets built that it's necessary? I apologize. I wish I could be more visual.
This time in the outline plan, the overall density is just under, I think it's 14.9. It's just, if you round up, it's at 15 units per developable hectare, including this parcel as a multifamily site.
Okay.
So that was what was anticipated when the outline plan was approved by council a number of years ago. If it were amended, then the recommendation would likely be to keep at that level of density, because our MDP does require 15 as a minimum now.
Can I?
Certainly, go follow up, Cam.
Thank you for the follow-up. And so thank you. I appreciate it. You have answered what I was asking, and I am grateful for that based on the way I described that. So I think some of the concerns I saw were in regards to traffic, but my understanding is based on this view is doesn't matter, that traffic was going to be coming regardless. And so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'm prepared to go ahead and make the motion, and then I have a few comments. That council give second reading to bylaw 400.54 as presented. And the few comments are that this is just simply moving something from future designation into like actually giving it a proper designation. It's been on the area structure plan. It's been part of the outline plan. A lot of the concerns potentially could have been easier to alleviate with traffic in particular if the area structure plan had been included, because it does show the traffic pattern. And so I would encourage that for future situations like this as we start to develop that area out. And those aren't necessarily things that just changed last year. I think the area structure plan was last done in 2017, if I recall correctly. So those are important documents, and it's important for both the public. So when they're purchasing property, especially on the edge of town, and they're wondering what's happening next, those plans do exist. Not to say that they can't be changed, but there's definitely a level of consultation that's required to do that, so that gives people an opportunity to give feedback. But it also gives assurance for residents and for developers, for that matter, that when they're looking to invest in an area of town that might not be fully built out, that they have an idea of what's coming, and that's important. So yeah, again, just for future purposes, I really think that area structure plan should be included. Thank you.
Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yes, I would agree with Councillor Hibbs on that. The Southeast Area Structure Plan would be nice to include it, because I'm looking at it here. So the current developer owns the remainder of this quarter. Is that correct? To the east? Okay, up to 34th Street, I guess it is. Oh no, sorry, that's okay. Never mind. Anyways, then who owns the quarter to the north, or the remainder of the quarter to the north? Because there is a road that goes around that stormwater pond and ties back into 45th, 46th Ave. And I guess I'm just wondering what kind of timeline would be, when do you foresee that road? Probably nowhere in the near future, I suppose, but I'm just wondering who owns that land where that road would be.
So typically, internal road networks are timed with development. So if and when there is development interest and a developer comes forward and puts forward a development proposal, and with the city is when those roads would be developed. So the road development to the north would come with the development of that area.
So not anytime soon. Thank you.
That's what I was going to say. As much as these developments have to stand on their own merit, it may be nice to look at it more holistically as a total unit. However, I think that to try and expect some sort of an estimation as to when that particular date might be, I think is highly unlikely. By the looks of the blank faces around the room, I think that's correct. So I guess just a couple of things for this redesignation, in addition to what was said earlier. I think that the developers need to be commended for communicating their intent to their area residents there with the sign, and that might have had something to do with the lack of participation this evening, that everybody was satisfied with what was going on. So that's good to see. And when a person looks at the overall plan there, I think this is an ideal spot for an R5 type development, and they're located in between a green area and a stormwater retention pond. And hopefully, I don't know if the current owners plan on developing themselves or securing a third party, but whoever it is, hopefully it's sooner as opposed to later, because I hear often about people who are in dire straits looking for rental accommodation in our city. So it'd be nice to see some more quality housing come on stream. Councillor Conick.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, no, I support the idea as well. I mean, hurry up and build it because you'll fill it quite quickly. But rest assured, I think that that intersection where 45th meets Mackenzie, sooner or later, we're going to have to deal with that intersection, I think, because it'll get congested, even with the new development that they're proposing to further south of there as well. That is going to get very busy down there. So just a heads up, I suspect will be.
Any additional comments or concerns? I believe Councillor Hibbs had made the motion for second reading of bylaw 5 or 400.54 land use bylaw amendment in the Mackenzie Ranch area for an R5 site. We'll call the vote. Please go ahead and vote now. With respect to second reading for bylaw 400.54, it is passed unanimously. Councillor Ross.
Yes, being unanimous, we can then go ahead and make the council gives third reading to bylaw 400.54 as presented. Oh, I'm sorry, my apologies. I jumped ahead. Pardon me? Yeah.
It was unanimous.
May I do the proper motion now?
Please do so.
The council resolves to consider the third reading of bylaw 400.54 at the same meeting as second reading.
Not at all. With our new rules in place and for good reason, that's the appropriate way to go. And thank you for putting it forward. So with the motion to consider the third reading of bylaw 400.54, do we have any input? Please go ahead and vote. And that is unanimous to bring it forward for consideration. And good to see our bylaws working well, even when the chair fails to recognize that one had been done incorrectly. So thank you, Councillor Ross. So we made the motion that it's okay to consider third reading. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll make the motion that council gives third reading to bylaw 400.54 as presented.
Thank you. Any final input with respect to 400.54 land use bylaw amendment for Mackenzie Ranch, third reading? Please go ahead and vote. With a sigh of relief from the developers, I believe that was unanimously in favor vote. Yes, it was. Thanks, everyone. Director Piche, we bypassed your item here up for third reading with respect to bylaw 513, the encroachment bylaw. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy, and good evening, Council. Before Council this evening is third reading of the encroachment bylaw 513. Administration proposed a strategy that categorizes the encroachments and an approach to managing encroachments on city land. Now, to be clear, encroachments are not allowed on city lands. They are not allowed on environmental or municipal reserves as per the MGA. However, administration must work with landowners to rectify those that are in place. Categories were created to determine how to prioritize those encroachments. And just to remind Council of those categories, they are the following. Minor encroachments are less than 0.2 meters or 20 centimeters and have no negative impact on city operations. A moderate encroachment is less than 0.2 meters and has a negative impact on city operations or the public enjoyment of land, or the encroachment is greater than 0.2 but less than 1 meter. The next category is a major encroachment, and these encroachments would exceed 1 meter or are those that have been determined ineligible for an encroachment agreement due to an impact on city operations or the public enjoyment of land. And then the last category is an egregious encroachment, those that are beyond a major encroachment. There was a question that was raised at the April 22nd, 2024 council meeting regarding encroachment agreement fees. While encroachment agreement fees are not part of the encroachment bylaw, but part of the rates and fees schedule through planning and development, a sample fee schedule was developed to help calculate the amount for an encroachment agreement fee. Unfortunately, that sample wasn't included in the initial distribution of the agenda, but it was sent out this afternoon, and it was handed out in on everybody's desks for this evening's meeting. So what that schedule does is it shows that there's a agreement fee that is non-specific. It's 123 Lacombe Lane. And they use a specific example of 35 square meters as an encroachment area with a 10-year agreement term. The total encroachment agreement fee would, as in this example, would be $3,181.76. So at the April 22nd council meeting, there were no changes requested by council, and administration recommends that council approve third reading of the encroachment bylaw 513. And if there are any questions, I am very happy to answer them.
Thanks, Director Piche. Councillor Konik.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So just one real quick question, Director Piche. So is the intent of administration, once this is passed, to do a major blitz on encroachments, or is it just future encroachments, or is it just ones that have been identified as over moderate that the plan is to go after? I'm just wondering what the game plan is.
Thank you, Councillor Konik. We did have a meeting actually just this afternoon, as if in fact the bylaw does pass, what our plans are going to be. We're going to do some education to start. We want to make sure that people are aware that this bylaw has passed and what the implications are. And then we have identified a number of properties that do have some encroachment to them, and we'll be looking at some letters to go out to them and give them some timelines to be able to remove those encroachments.
Go ahead, Councillor Konik.
So if I just may quickly follow up, so in all likelihood, those are the major encroachments that you're speaking of. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Major or egregious?
We will probably be looking at some of the major and then some of the egregious as we see fit.
Very good. Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Two questions. One with regards to the encroachment agreement fee. It talked here about a 10-year term, would that be something that would be looked at a renewal then after 10 years if the encroachment still was in place?
I am going to have to actually refer to Director Thompson or CAO Gowdy to answer that one.
CO Gowdy.
Yeah, so the only encroachments that are eligible for an encroachment agreement would be minor encroachments or moderate that didn't have an impact on city services or public access. And so those would be eligible for renewal at the 10-year mark under the same conditions. So with the payment for taxes and property value at the same time, they would potentially be able to get multiple encroachment agreements lasting 10 years each. Earlier, Director Piché had said some, we'll be following up on some of the major encroachments, but that was a slip of the tongue. All of the major encroachments will be receiving letters advising them that they have until the fall, the late fall, so kind of like November 1st type thing, to remedy the major encroachment, or they will face the initial $250 fee November 1st of 2024. They would, in the letter, it would also advise them that if that encroachment existed November 1st of 2025, they would face a $500 fee, 2026 a $1,000 fee, and $1,000 every year thereafter. So all major encroachments will be receiving the same letter and then the same fine starting November 1st if the encroachment still exists. Egregious encroachments, should council pass it tonight, we'll be going through a process to identify what we see as kind of like the top 3 most egregious properties, encroachments that we see right now. We'll bring those to council in camera, since this is the first time we're using this bylaw, even though it says the CAO designates the encroachments. I want to ensure alignment, and so I'll be bringing those properties to council for input and consideration. And then once those are selected, we'll be working through our lawyers to actually address those encroachments, because in many cases there's significant infrastructure off property that will require a tailored approach for those properties. So it will be a uniform approach for all major encroachments. Sorry to answer both the previous question and yours.
And you also had your light on earlier. Was there another item as well, CO Gowdy?
That was answered by Director Piché, actually.
So you'd suggested that those properties that do have an encroachment agreement with them in place after the 10-year time period, that they would automatically be considered for renewal. But I would suggest that if the conditions are the same and nothing has changed about it impacting city services, 10 years is fairly lengthy time, and to suggest they're automatically eligible might be a little presumptuous. Not?
Yes, I apologize if I had said automatically. That was there's nothing automatic about it, other than they would automatically be considered under the same framework or one that was adopted or amended by a future council for a new encroachment agreement. There would be no automatic renewals by any means.
Fair enough. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So just looking at this encroachment agreement fee, there is a encroachment agreement term. It just says 10, and then I guess the calculated encroachment value comes out to $2,881. Is that divided by 10 years, or is that each year?
That is the full 10-year value that we would be looking to have payment in one lump sum at the beginning of the execution of the encroachment agreement.
Great, thank you.
Right, one last call for input with respect to encroachment bylaw 513. Councillor Konik.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So the associated legal fees, obviously the city will pay their end. But the individuals who are encroaching, I'm assuming they'll have to pay their own legal fees and everything else, even if they're unaware that they're encroaching. Obviously, if they're major or egregious, they know they're encroaching, but I mean,
Well, let's keep in mind that they will be forwarded a letter outlining that in fact they are in that condition of encroachment on public lands initially.
Yes, so that's correct. And just to expand on my earlier answer, which maybe I should have mentioned before, minor and moderate encroachments will only be addressed on a reactive basis when they come for a compliance certificate, or in the case that we receive a complaint from a neighboring property or adjacent property that says my neighbor is encroaching. That does absolutely have the potential to impact landowners at the time of sale. So if they're going to sell and then someone, they come to for compliance and the city says, oh, we noticed on your RPR that you actually have a major encroachment. You're gonna have to remove that or you're facing a $250 fee this November 1st and $500 next year and $1,000 next year. If you're on the purchasing end of that, well, as you well know, if you don't like surprises like that to come up. And so I could see people saying, well, I thought my yard was all the way to the curb or whatever. And so you could get some frustration from property transactions where there is encroachments that come up at the time of the compliance.
Anyone else? Seeing no additional lights on, then we will. I'm sorry, there was not a motion on the floor. My mistake. Makes it easy. There's nothing to vote on. Councillor Ross.
Thank you. I make the motion that council approves the third reading of the enforced encroachment bylaw 513.
Thank you. So for 513, the encroachment bylaw, third reading, then any additional input? Once again, none. Go ahead and vote. That is passed unanimously. Thanks, everyone. Director Piche, when did we first embark upon this journey for the encroachment?
I would say it was Director Thompson brought a report to council last summer, I believe. And then there were subsequent reports through the fall and into the winter. So it's been nearly a year.
Thank you. The reason I asked is that this has not been a knee-jerk reaction. It's been a long time coming. And I think there's been an awful lot of consultation. And so, while most people do not like a bunch of extra rules, this one has been, I think, well thought out and ought to come of no surprise to anyone. But I expect we will hear from a few citizens nonetheless. I believe that takes us down to a request for decision item number 6.5, the strategic plan update. And CEO Gowdy, you can take us through that item, please.
Yes, thank you. It's my pleasure this evening to bring for council's consideration an updated and amended strategic plan for the remainder of council's term. As you know, we added a couple of steps to this year's review process, including a prioritization meeting at a committee meeting on May the, it doesn't matter, a few weeks ago. And council provided their input, and we used that not necessarily to change a lot of the target dates, because many of those are driven by external factors like contractor availability or maybe timelines with an external agency, but really to look at where we could focus our efforts in specific areas. We certainly know that with a strategic plan with as many tactical items supporting council's priorities. It would be unrealistic to think we're going to accomplish them all before the end of the term. And so we wanted to have your input about where we really want to focus our efforts to make sure these things are maintaining the timelines that we've put out for you. It's not that we consider timelines soft targets, but the reality is that some incoming changes, such as legislative changes or other forces, frequently cause the reprioritization of work. And so when we do that, it's not always feasible to come back to council and say, well, we've got this, Bill 20's come in, so we're going to have to change the way we do elections. So which one of these 90 items should we slide? So this helps us make those decisions in real time as they come up. Todd, if you could go forward. So what we've got here, I won't go through everyone in detail, but this slide does a good job, and I'll go through a couple more of showing for council and the public, I guess, the challenge that any municipality and administration faces in trying to prioritize a not always 100% unified group in terms of what their priorities are. And so you can see here, it's great when we have things like the Lacombe Lodge. We had spoken earlier of, well, if this is a high priority, we'll bring in some external support for that. And so certainly, high priority for everyone. That's great. And even the medium priority for everyone, downtown parking, inventory, and consultation, that gives us a really clear view. Unfortunately, those are rare. Those type of everything over on the left side of the line, which I consider kind of like those are priorities. Everything on the right side of the line is like, well, no, not so much. There isn't a lot of this where you get 100% alignment. What you get more is like the Rotary Cranna Lake proposal, where you have, it's sort of in the middle. Some don't see it as a priority at all. Some see it as a high priority, and the majority are kind of lukewarm in the middle. So maybe you can go to the next one. And I haven't put these in any specific order, but you can see here that often what one of the challenges when prioritizing is that there's lots of good, meaty tactics there that people support. And so there's generally a skew towards like everything is a priority, which is kind of challenging to read between. And again, you're seeing that for, say, the film-friendly policy. Well, two see it as it's not a priority at all. One says it's a high priority. Two say medium. Two say low. And so there is really, it's not as clear-cut and quantitative as, frankly, a guy like me would like, where you can just say, well, this one's an 80%, this one's a 60%. We did try to do that, though. We tried to take the results that we have here and then rate them between the highest priority things, which would be those where you're seeing 7 council members express strong or medium support. So kind of left of that center line. Medium priority being, and Todd, can you, is 6. And actually we made a color gradient for each, where there's 7 supporting 6 all the way down to 0. I don't think there actually is anywhere 0 support, but we do have a couple where just 1 support. So maybe if you could go to the next one, Todd. Yeah, it's not that interesting. So some of the things, of course, we see them, and we spoke of that at the committee meeting. Build a public works facility, for example. That's really not a priority type thing. That's a commitment that is happening. It's in the queue. So it's no surprise that the majority of council really sees that as a high priority, because it is a committed project. On the other end of things, what we see sometimes is that less public facing, more internal tactics that we see as like supporting efficient core service delivery, for example, don't necessarily get the same council endorsement as a priority of council. And in some instances, we have taken that, we've inferred that to be not that you don't want to see us move ahead with it, but that it's really just not something that council needs to be involved in. And so maybe if you could flip another one, Todd, there's one that is the Perfect Mind software update is one that comes to mind. The AI policy is probably just as good of an example, but really, provided that administration is responsibly using that, I don't think council sees that as, well, what I'm taking here is the majority of council is not seeing that as a council priority that you see day-to-day involvement in. Maybe if you could scroll through the remainder there. Yeah, there's the Perfect Mind issue resolution. Actually, I thought only one saw it as even a medium, but the majority of council is seeing that as a low or not a priority. But I also know from working with all for years and seeing our shared values that the efficiency and the cost savings that could be achieved by resolving this issue, if significant, are something you would support. Just not that you'd see it as a council level strategic thing. Maybe go through a couple more. Yeah, so there was some good feedback on things like, we really appreciated this feedback on like the taxi bylaw, and there was a couple where really the majority of council is not seeing that as a priority. Again, it's not to say, well, then we'll shred all the work that you've done in the taxi bylaw. It's to say, okay, well, if and when new things come up between now and the end of council's term, this is one that can potentially get bumped down and triaged below other things that are coming in without compromising council's vision for the community. Maybe the next one, Todd. Again, there you're seeing there is sort of a skew, and I don't want to say that to point out a bias. I think it actually is a really positive thing that there's a lot of alignment between what we have in our strategic plan and what council sees as priorities for the community. And so certainly there's a lot of excitement. Here we're seeing majority support for all of those items. And of course, the capital project profile, everyone sees it as a priority of some kind. This is a nice slide where there's not any misalignment in terms of a councillor or more seeing items as not priorities whatsoever. To the next one. And perhaps with that, I'll ask Todd to, how many are we, is this the last one? Or is it, go through the last two. And then I would open it up for questions about, there we go, thank you. Questions about the proposed strategic plan, the review process, or how the review process shows up or affected the way we presented the amended plan. We do have the color coding in the amended plan. So if you could go to this page here, Denise. Looks like that. First page of the tactics. I will just show you what we've changed there. So while she's pulling that up, so if you have the strategic plan, you have a copy that has the tactics there, and we've added some coloration on the left to highlight, and we've reordered the items under each area so that the highest priority council priorities, highest council priorities are listed first, and then in descending over down to the lowest in each category, and then they are color coded so that you can tell at a glance, sort of via a heat map of where you see that in your prioritization. So looks like we aren't able to get that up, but we do have it in your agenda package. It looks like that. And so it is very similar to what you've seen in the past, just with that extra detail of the results of your prioritization. We are looking for adoption of the plan this evening. Thank you, Denise. Legislative Coordinator Bell's one. And I'm open for any questions about the plan or the process.
Thanks, CEO Gowdy. Just take us back to the very first slide there. I think one was brought up with the Rotary proposal, and I just didn't want to give the community the wrong idea. I think that there was some challenges. It's not that, from my take anyway, it wasn't like council did not appreciate the idea or whatnot. I think there was some challenges for a suitable location and whatnot for it that I think had seemed problematic, and I think has resulted in some of the less favorable outlook on it. Just some of the comments that were made for it made it seem like it was somehow not received well by council, and I don't think that's really accurate. I think it was just there was some challenges that made it seem like it could be a substantial amount of work getting it off the ground. So I didn't want to see one of our valued groups in the community not feel appreciated. I, for one, though, do like this type of thing when you're trying to come up with a reasonable set of priorities over quite a large number of items with a, how did you put it, a group of people who are not always 100% aligned? Were you referring to council? And quite honestly, I think that this strikes a pretty good balance. It's there's going to be some for every one of us in council that don't feel it's quite right, but overall, I think it's a pretty accurate picture when you look at a number of priorities within any of these groups. Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. I think Councillor Dallas was ahead of me, but just curious, for example, the taxi bylaw, you mentioned it wasn't a super high priority for the majority of council, and yet you still have 2024 Q3. Wouldn't that surmise that maybe it's the 2025 thing, or you're just going to leave it there and maybe if it comes up, you'll do it, or how I'm just curious why those dates haven't changed. There's a number of items like that where it's not deemed to be a super high priority, it would seem, by council, yet it seems to be done this year still.
So for a lot of the taxi bylaw is a good example. For that one, we actually have the majority of the work done, and there's just a few remaining things. And so even though it's not if it had been a really high priority for council, we probably could have gotten it Q2 of this year. But because there's so much work already been put in place, it's quite reasonable that with the remaining 20% of the work, we can still get that done without disrupting other work. Having said that, if other priorities arise, that is one that we would look at quite early to say, well, I don't think they'll mind if that becomes Q4 2024 or even Q1 2025, as long as what's coming in is deemed to be a higher priority than the taxi bylaw.
Councillor Dallas, I wanted to acknowledge you first. However, Councillor Connick kept kicking me under the desk here, so I had to go with him.
Oh, thank you for that. Thanks for recognizing me. I think I want to say thank you for this and for bringing forward. It's greatly appreciated. It's nice to see the amount of work that's actually going on. And it's also great to see where all of our other team members are on what they see for alignment. I think it's really important to do that. And we don't often just sit around and just discuss everything that's going on and see how the others feel about it. So I think that's important and adds value to us. And As for how often this should be going on, I don't really have any input on that, but I do think this was definitely beneficial to be happening at this point. And thank you for that. I'm not sure if anybody else has any comments on that, but in the meantime, I'll just make the motion that council endorses the 2024 to 2026 strategic plan as presented.
Thanks, Councillor Dallas. And in addition to advising all of us and what's going on, I think it's important for the public to appreciate all of the things that are being worked on, many of them concurrently. So frankly, it's quite amazing some of these items that come before us, that the amount of work that does go into putting them forward to, and having all the correct information so that we can hopefully make the proper decision for our community. So we have a good synopsis of what's to come for quite some time yet, and it'll be interesting to see how it works out before the end of the term. Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, I do definitely appreciate that this was a lot of work and that the results are informative. I guess one just small thing that I would say, I did find the process to be a little bit awkward at times. I think that it would potentially be a little easier if the strategic goals were sort of split into ones that were already in progress versus ones that actually haven't really made any progress at all, because then it would be easier for me to say, do I agree with the current prioritization of something that's already in progress, like the public works building? Obviously it's already, what am I going to say? No, it's of no interest, and that ship has sailed. So I would like it if that was a different class versus the other ones that are, because to me, kind of the point of this is that we've only got a finite amount of time to try and accomplish the last few things on our list, and it's not realistic to expect that they're all going to be done. So this is a re-look at all of them, because a lot of them were right from the beginning, but some of them got added along the way. So you're sort of reevaluating what hasn't been completed yet. And yeah, I think that actually should be moved higher. That one, it doesn't seem as critical now. I'd feel like it should be moved lower, but because it hasn't had any action on it, it's just much clearer. So that's my only feedback. Otherwise, I appreciate the work and the even the effort of wanting to find out this from us. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
CEO Gowdy.
Thank you for reminding me of that. We actually had a very similar conversation about it we said, well, for next year, what would we change, or for the next time around? And that was one thing we said, is really these projects that are kind of like the end is in sight, or there's a clear path, they're on rails to, there's no really getting off of it. We would put those to the side and really focus on those ones where there is discretion, and also in making sure that when we're presenting those to council, saying, well, if it's a low priority, this is what it looks like. Maybe it's a delayed implementation date, or no action will happen unless there's some aligning of the stars. If it's a high priority, we'll go out and get a contractor, or so that there's really, when possible, a shared understanding of what prioritization means on that specific item. And so if we strip out some of those ones where there really is no ability to modify, we can focus on those ones where there is. So thank you for reminding me of that discussion.
Not seen a bunch of other input here. So before us is the motion from Councillor Dallas that Council endorse the 2024-2025 strategic plan as presented this evening. One last opportunity for input. Very good. Please vote now. Really throw you a curveball and get 3 no's. Of course, that is unanimously approved. Thanks, everyone. Do it not. So this evening, we do have an unusually large number of in-camera items. 5, so before considering a move to in-camera, I'll just briefly outline the next meetings. And they're all regular council meetings held here in chambers at 5:30 p.m. So rather than repeat that. So for the dates, towards the end of the month, May 27th, and on June 10th, and July 8th, all 3 of which are Mondays. So no long weekend holidays align with our regular meeting schedule for the next while anyway. So with that in mind, that leaves us with section 8 in camera items. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Motion to move in camera.
Record will reflect it is 7:06 p.m. Please go ahead and vote now. And that is unanimous in favor. Wait for